question. Can we ask him about what are the components?
Okay,
what
surely.
make up the
Yeah.
program? What is in the program?
That's good.
Okay.
We have everything here.
Yeah. What we did next, after we developed this chart of values and so on with this information in it, the next thing we went to is, okay, how do we transfer this to the curriculum? And to me, that is a really critical question. There is a saying that, in fact, I heard that this week, if you don't put it on the calendar, it probably won't happen. Well, for educators, we would say, if you don't have it in the lesson plan, or the course outline, then it probably won't happen. And so the theory that we worked on is that the decisions, the planning for integration of faith and learning has to be as intentional. It has to be as planned as all the other education components. And you know how we go through the work, and you're learning about that in your curriculum classes and so on. How do we go about successfully teaching this content? Well, we're very good at that. We spend a lot of time on that, but we have to be that same kind of intentional. We have to be the same systematic planning for our integration of faith and learning as we do that. It can't be, I'm going to teach this subject today. I do my lesson plan. I do all of that thing. And then, what Bible text shall I read for them this morning? Maybe I can make some kind of, that's not going to do it. I mean, we've done that for years, but we're really turning it around backwards, aren't we? Because that's the most important thing. Even if they don't get the curriculum as well, that's still the most important thing, because that's salvation, So for Adventists, this is really important, and we have to be intentional. So, the next step for us is, how do we move it into a curriculum? And let me just say this. For me, and I heard this from Dr. G.T. He preached Sabbath and so on like that. We had a talk with him today with some of the professors and stuff, and he emphasized this again, and it's in the book here. You can have all the methods in the world, but if you are not connected to God, if you're not having a spiritual experience, if you're not living a witness, all this stuff is shallow mechanics. So the first rule, of integration of faith is to be the godly person that will speak of your Christian witness every day, every way. That is the core of it, because no matter how many great methods we have, if that is missing, it's not there. So you have to have your personal devotions. You have to have your Bible study and your experience with God. You have to have that core. And I would say, forget all of this stuff and emphasize that if that's not there, because that's number one job. So let me just emphasize that. So, and we do have a few pages dealing with that in the first. And I just want to, I don't want to belittle that in any way, because, the spiritual life is core. Then for each subject area, we talk about several ways. I think there's 8 different ways that you can go about putting integration of faith into your curriculum. And so what we suggest is, prayerfully, after you prepared yourself spiritually and so on, you sit down with your course outline, your curriculum, and so on, and you say, okay, on this day or in this week, how am I going to communicate the Adventist values that I want to have there? And as you go about thinking about that, you've got this toolbox around you. You've got 100 values on the rebirth. And you've got these other 8 different methods, so to speak. And of course, there's many others, and they will, they've been talking about this all the time, and you'll hear many others. But the idea is that you take your course outline, and then you embed it systematically in there with these different choices. And what we've given you here in the, what do we call it, handbook to assist teachers making their classes achieve the ideals of Adventist education. We've given you a few examples of it, but they fall into a category, several categories. And we drew from a number of wonderful sources on this, and this is not all original stuff. We drew from as many places as we could. One of the things that we did right at the beginning is the philosophy, the Adventist philosophy as it relates to that discipline area. What is the rationale for Adventists to teach art? What is the rationale for Adventists to teach history? Why would an Adventist want to teach history? Why would an Adventist want to teach art? What is the connection between Adventists and art or mathematics or any of the subject areas? That's worthy of reflection. And we give you kind of a start at it. Don't canonize what we've written here. You know what I mean, canonize. Don't make it like the Bible and say, well, this is the answer. No, you have to struggle with this also. You say, why would we teach this subject area? Do we do this just because the world teaches this, just because they say this, so on? Or is there an Adventist reason why we would want to teach this subject? And what is the Adventist perspective on this subject area? Because that is very important. That drives you for the whole class. And so we gave a sample there just to whet your appetite, to think, what is the foundation of it? So one of the things that you could do when you're teaching a class and you want to integrate it, maybe toward the first of that time, you may want to say, maybe you ask, why are Adventists teaching this class in Philippine history? Why are Adventists teaching this class? Why is it important for an Adventist to know this subject? Why skip it? If you're teaching evolution, and sometimes you have to do that as part of the thing, at least what they believe, even if you don't believe it, why would an Adventist want you to understand that as opposed to creation? So getting that foundation for the thing, it'd be one way that you could integrate faith. And as you talk about that, they may ask questions. They may, depending on what age you're dealing with, that would be thing. And so the philosophy of art from an Adventist perspective, the rationale for why we would teach it. And then the next one, the third one I would have on the list would be creating a spiritual atmosphere. And I can't overemphasize this. Sometimes kids experience integration of faith and learning even without words because they feel it, environment. When they come into our classroom, is this a safe place? Do they know that people are praying for me in this classroom? That if I have a problem, I can share it with this group because I know they will understand and they'll pray for me. I know that people won't laugh at me in this place if I make a mistake, that they will hold up my hands. If I have trouble, this is a community that I can trust and I can feel good about. Are we creating that spiritual? And when we say spiritual atmosphere, we're not saying, well, I have a nice bulletin board with a picture of Jesus on it. I'm one of those who believe every single classroom ought to have a picture, well, not only your national leader in there, I'd like to see you have a picture of Jesus in every classroom. It doesn't have to be just a mug shot. I mean, you could have different action shots, of him in different ministries and so on. But, having that focal point is critical to me. as well as a national flag and some of the other things that we typically have in a classroom, trash can and whiteboards and so on. Yeah. So creating that atmosphere. How can we create an atmosphere? And I think that's worth praying about and talking about. What kinds of things can we say when we introduce our class, when we bring people in the class? What kind of an atmosphere? I think talking about that to the class. This is our spiritual safe place, kids. This class is a place where we can ask questions and we can share and know that this is a place where we're among friends, where this is a God place. This is where the Holy Spirit is going to be. Creating that atmosphere in the classroom so that they love to come. This is the place where they will come when things are not going well. They're going to find safety and support in this place. And the teacher plays an important role in that. And when they feel that, they will want that the rest of their lives. And let's be honest, sometimes their homes are not providing this. I'm sad to say. Sometimes their homes are not providing this. And so we play such an important role for these kids. So let's make the most of that one. Okay, the next one is learning approaches. Identify and rewarding students who demonstrate. Okay, that's the one. Next one is mission of the church. I think that every subject area, if we can help children see experiences in this subject area where people are using this information to help further the mission of the church. Does the church need statisticians, mathematicians, and so on? Yes. Yes. Think about the Adventist Health Study. Think about, research that we're doing here without the, people like RJ and Brother Sam and these people. Yes, the church urgently needs those things. And these people, the children, when they see the models, and maybe we start with the smaller children, we give the illustrations maybe from their family, maybe from the people that are in the child's world. You can't talk about, Christian, philosophers or people in history to a small child. You talk about, the Sabbath school teacher, or you talk about that. You look for how that subject area can tie in to fulfilling the mission of church. Someday, maybe if you study hard in the area of English, you can serve the church because the church needs English teachers and give them some illustrations. They need people who are good writers for our Adventist news or for our magazines. We need people, and give them the vision. Tell them stories of people who live out the mission of the church using this discipline area. And that integrates it very nicely. They can, and if you run out of Adventist illustrations, use Christian examples, of great Christian leaders, Martin Luther, or, Galileo, or, other ones who we know are illustrations. So giving Christian examples is a thing. And there's some illustrations in here that you can do. And this is Christian contributors. I just say mission. Mission of the church, and then Christian contributors. I'll go fast here. And then the rebirth, if all else fails, you go to rebirth and say, okay, today we're going to talk about the Trinity or something, and just as your spiritual lesson. Or you may talk about forgiveness, or you talk about, repentance, or, whatever the value might be. This gives you. I found, without a list like this, I go to the favorite 5. If I said, okay, right now everybody sit down and write 5 values to me, for me, chances are we would have people all writing the same, there would not be a huge variation of what we write down, because we just knee-jerk go to our favorite 4 or 5 values when we think about values, we think about those. So this kind of helps us get out of that and to think about other values. Let me also say that the rebirth value is very helpful because it is all written in positive terms. It's not saying don't steal. It doesn't say don't graffiti the walls. It talks about the positive side, about what God would have us do. And by the way, you will hear the same terms, these same value terms, talked about in secular context as society values. So what is the difference between honesty in the secular world and honesty to Adventists? That is a good question to think about, because it is different. We do these things for different reasons. and we've tried in Rebirth to put all the values through the eyes of a Christian. And they all have a value statement. I choose to be unselfish because God is unselfish, or whatever the one might be. So thinking about the value, not just from the value, but what the Christian value is worthy to think about. So, so if you haven't already picked one from these others, pick a Rebirth one and stick it into your curriculum. And what I'm trying to envision for you here is, as you go through the curriculum, as you go through your course outline, I should say, as you're going down from week to week and you're looking at your curriculum and you're thinking about which of these different subject areas will will be the right value for me to teach at that time. Sometimes you may be drawing from Rebirth. Sometimes you may be doing links to the curriculum. Sometimes you may be talking about spiritual atmosphere in your classroom, having exercises or games and so on that teach those things. In the art class, you may be, drawing pictures, using your skills as drawing, but to illustrate a Bible story or whatever. These things, your course outline is beginning to fill in. Your subject areas is beginning to fill in. And, again, this gives you variety. It gives you a choices of what you can do to fill in. You need to be intentional, though. It needs to be part of your curriculum. But don't do it mechanically. It's got to be drawn from Spirit-led planning. Okay, and then let me just finish up Adventist content. I'm a strong believer in the fact that our curriculum, as great as it is, developed by the great educators of our world and history, they don't cover everything that an Adventist should cover. And if we're using public textbooks, we have to ask ourselves, what is the content? Not just integrating faith with the subject areas that's already there from the government, but we want to say, what is the Adventist content that I want to add to that content to make this class Adventist? So that when we're teaching evolution, there may be some things that we want to add as an Adventist to the curriculum to talk about the evidence consistent with creation. We want to, maybe when we're talking about literature, we may want to say some things about how we choose literature that is consistent with our values. How do we choose maybe what media we watch? And what is the content that is important for this grade level, for this subject area, that an Adventist would want to see included? When we talk about literature, for instance, there's many great pieces the secular world to say every child ought to know this story and the lesson this teaches. And I most of the time agree with those. They're pretty good stories and they teach good lessons and so on like that. I don't have a fight with every one of those. Some of them I do. But I also think, wow, Adventists our Christians have great literature too. I mean, Pilgrim's Progress, you know, it's great fiction. I mean, fabulous fiction, you know. And there are excellent stories that teach good values and so on. We need to inject into the secular curriculum our Adventist content. And that's this one here. So when you're going through integration of faith, it's not just matching the curriculum. At some point you want to stop and say, what is there in this curriculum that we need to add as a Seventh-day Adventist for this grade level, for this subject area? And believe me, when you really seriously think about that, God can really bless you, and you can really find some great stuff. And I wish there was some way that we could network to share all these wonderful things that I know teachers are doing all over the world, you know, so that we can fill these boxes with everybody's ideas, you know, so that we richer education. So I'm very close to the end here. Yeah, and then we have illustrations of these, you know, for the different grade levels and the different subject areas that you can look. If you want to see at least an example of how somebody has done this, where we actually have a curriculum and what the value we're going to teach, and then what kinds of things that we might put to make it work, just to get you started on this. Yeah, I think a good assignment would be for them to pick a course outline for some subject area, and do a month worth of, in that course outline, that given course outline, how would they integrate faith using all these wonderful tools and the things that they're learning in class? How would you go about actually doing it? Because that's the work that in the end you're going to have to do, right?